As the Chargers come to town, we've traded snow for sunlight. Yes, warm weather, here it is as the Broncos return to Empower Field at Mile High, looking for their first division win of the season. Welcome into Broncos Weekend, everybody. I'm Matt Boyer, alongside Alexis Perry and the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. Guys, the Broncos wrap up 2 straight home games against 2 division opponents. We're moving on from the Chiefs game. As cold and as miserable as that game was.
It's nice right now.
It is nice. It's very easy to turn the page when
Yes.
you've got weather like this. Alexis, what have you heard from the Broncos this week at practice, their media sessions? How have they been able to turn the page?
Well, I think so far this week, the leaders have really stepped up and they have fallen on the sword. Specifically, a guy like Drew Lock. He has mentioned that, it is kind of his fault for those offensive shortcomings so far this season. So it's great to see a guy like him really step up and take some responsibility, almost to a fault. It seems like Drew Lock is almost harder on himself than any of us could be. So hopefully he doesn't take things too personally heading into this week. But I also think a really good encouraging sign too is seeing how much these younger guys have been stepping up as well. Jerry Jeudy this week, he mentioned in the huddle that they needed to tighten things up, and he's not a guy that you would think needs to really speak up right now, but it's so good with a young team, a young core, that those guys are taking the reins and stepping up. So I think that's encouraging for this week and also for the future of this team in the long run.
Steve, if the Broncos are going to turn the tide, so to speak, and right the ship, it's good to get a team like the Chargers. They're 41-18-1 against the Chargers at home historically as a franchise. So how do you make sure that a loss doesn't linger as a player? How do you kind of look forward to that next team?
Well, I mean, when you have a loss like we did against the Chiefs, and we haven't beat the Chiefs, what's 10 games now?
Yep.
10 games in a row. You got to learn what you can from the experience, and then you got to move on. You got to put it out of your mind. Just like when you touch a hot stove when you're young, and you got to put it out of your mind, but you still
bring it back.
You know what happened. You know what happened, and you learn from it. And that's what we have to do. We have to learn, what mistakes did we make? What areas can we improve in from that Kansas City Chiefs game? Special teams wise, offensively and defensively. Although we played well defensively, it still wasn't good enough for the win. And I know they feel like that in the locker room. They have something they can learn from it. Hopefully we'll get those points. We'll take the lessons from that and we'll bring it into this Los Angeles Chargers game and come out with the win.
Speaking of points, let's take a look at the quarterback matchup for this game. This is the first time since 2005 a quarterback not named Phil Rivers is going to be behind center for the Chargers, and that, of course, is Justin Herbert. Alexis, Herbert's coming off a great game.
Yes.
Locke, kind of a tough one. So, how does he rebound? What kind of changes could we expect from the Broncos offense?
Well, if he wants to rebound this week, which we all know that he does, he needs to take what the defense gives him. He needs to go through his progressions, and he needs to stick in the pocket for just a little while longer before he starts running around trying to force a play. Like Drew mentioned on Wednesday, he needs to be better on third down. He has a 26.4 passer rating on third down this year. That is really, really bad, so he really needs to step those up. He needs to make those Pop Warner throws like he mentioned. I think as a whole, those 3 wide sets, it seems like Drew isn't very comfortable with those. So if he's going to go and say, hey, I get to go into Pat Shurmur's office and tell him what I'm comfortable with, maybe mention those 3 wide sets aren't what you're comfortable with. Maybe he needs to mix in a little bit more 12 personnel, get those 2 tight ends out there, Alberto, Noah Fant, great relationships with those guys.
Alexis just mentioned it, Steve, 12 personnel, 13 personnel. Vic Fangio said it's going to take all 11 guys, no matter the personnel, in order for the Broncos to improve the passing game. So which one of those 11 guys needs to have a really big game this weekend?
I mean, several of them. I'm going to start with Lloyd Cushenberry. Although everybody knows he's a rookie, second-round draft pick, we have high expectations of him. And I know that he feels like he can play better for himself. And, we feel like he can play better, and he needs to play better in order to protect Drew Lock. Give him a little bit more time to be able to make some of the adjustments. Now, secondly, Drew Lock.
Okay.
He needs to, do a better job of completing the passes, throwing accurate passes, knowing where his second and third reads are, and just, leading this team. And the one thing he can't do, just like Alexis said, he can't go in the dump. He can't go in the tank based off of last week's game. We saw him practice in training camp. He was, did a great job, very accurate, knew where he was going with the ball. He just got to get that confidence back up. But I think he can do it. I think he will do it Just got to bounce back from it.
That's what made him so successful last year. In those 5 starts, 4-1, it was his confidence. It was his swagger, right? We've talked about it ad nauseum. He needs to maintain that confidence.
A lot of attention obviously going to be on the offense and the quarterbacks, but on the defensive side of the ball, this matchup gives us 2 of the premier edge rushers in the NFL in Joey Bosa and Bradley Chubb as we take a look at their stats. Alexis, Chubb has at least 1 sack in the last 3 games he's played. Why do you think he's had so much success recently, and does he seem more vocal? Because we're hearing a lot more from him in recent weeks.
Yeah, when I think of Bradley Chubb's recent success, I think back, he didn't have his ACL surgery, 2 years ago. It was about mid-October 2019. So up until now, he is now a full year removed from that ACL surgery, unlike the first few weeks of the season. So I think each and every week he's getting a little bit healthier and he's getting a little bit more confident. And those 2.5 sacks against the Jets, that just unleashed the beast because he now knows that he is himself. He is Bradley Chubb. And in terms of leadership, I think Bradley Chubb has always been a great leader for this defense. But with Von Miller out, this is his defense now. And there are a ton of great leaders on that side of the ball, but I really love how Bradley Chubb is showing his passion. He's showing his frustration because we all know the Denver Broncos are synonymous with winning, and that this team hasn't been doing that a lot as of late. So it's up to guys, veteran guys like Bradley Chubb, to step up and say, hey, this is not okay. We are not a mediocre team. We are not okay with losing. That's what you need from a guy like Bradley Chubb, and he's doing a great job.
Steve, on the flip side, with Joey Bosa in 8 games against the Broncos' career, 5.5 sacks and 13 quarterback hits. This dude likes playing the orange and blue. So what does he do well, and how do the Broncos combat what he offers?
Well, it's not only Joey Bosa, but it's also Melvin Ingram. They make a great tandem there, and the Chargers do a great job of utilizing them by moving them around. One time you'll see Bosa on the left and Ingram on the right, and then they'll have them flopped, and then they'll have Bosa on the left at the edge, and then they'll have Melvin Ingram at inside linebacker or, line up over the guard, rushing the guard. So they do a great job of moving them around, giving them an opportunity to go up against multiple different linemen to see who can block them. And, Joey Bosa is just so great at being low when he comes off the ball. He has a motor like anyone, like Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. He has that type of motor. He and Melvin Ingram, and they got a lower body that's so strong. So we're going to have to make sure that our guys, when they're blocking them, that they're low to the ground and that they have the strength in their legs to hold them up.
A lot of premier matchups on deck for Broncos fans this weekend. We've got to take a quick break, but when we come back on Broncos Weekend, the last name Pagano is synonymous with football in the Centennial State. Steve Atwater is sitting down with John Pagano, the outside linebackers coach for the Broncos. Plus, Alexis is back out near Mile High Monument cooking up some tasty tailgate treats. Don't go anywhere.